These devices and this light has us all hooked. You have people who are so severely circadian disrupted that it has led to an exacerbation of chronic disease, everything from neurological conditions to cardiometabolic problems, autoimmune disease, cancer. It's the number one endemic issue that we're not really seeing the light of. And when it comes to children, I honestly think that we are sleepwalking into the most disastrous circumstances that we've ever created for a generation of human beings. It's like you have no idea what you're setting your children up for.
I truly believe that all this circadian stuff is going to be common knowledge. And by that time, if you willingly and knowingly let your child shine a blue enriched light into their eye consistently in the evening, you'll be reported to Child Protective Services. Once you truly realize the impact that you're having on this, like, it's not a joke.
Gentlemen, welcome to Decentralized Radio. Daniel, Jeff, my boys, it's nice to talk to you finally, get you here on the podcast and talk about probably the most environmentally disruptive toxin in everybody's lives, and that is circadian rhythm disruption. And Daniel, I kind of want to open the floor to you really quick to describe what is circadian rhythm disruption and why is it so pervasive for everybody, no matter what walk of life you come from.
Yeah, fantastic, Ryan. Great question to start us off. Okay, so I'm going to skin this cat a couple of ways. Number one thing I want to say is that it is a profound disconnect between the natural state of ease that human beings are here to embody. Okay, and it's a continuum, right? So you have people who are so severely circadian disrupted that it has led to an exacerbation of chronic disease, everything from neurological conditions to cardiometabolic problems, autoimmune disease, cancer. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have people who are high functioning, who are, doing everything they can to support themselves, their family, their responsibilities, their passion and purpose in life, but who aren't able to unlock the truest and fullest potential because of the disruption to the circadian systems in their life. So as you mentioned, I believe wholeheartedly it's the number one sort of endemic issue that we're not really seeing the light of. Excuse the pun on that. And ultimately, I think Jeff would agree with me on this. I don't believe it has to be this way. I also believe that it's, the number one most simple to treat issue that we face in, modern healthcare today.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And Jeff, you have a really profound story for yourself as an N of one with this exact principle that we're going to lay out over the rest of this podcast. But I really want to kind of give you the floor to talk about your experience with CRD, as well as the profound changes you saw within yourself. And like Daniel was just saying, it's probably some of the most simple changes that one can make. But because this problem is so pervasive in a way that's never been seen before and continues to get worse on a high level in modern society, I think it also makes it one of the most difficult to tackle from an addiction point of view.
Yeah, dude. It's one of those things. CRD is something that's huge and it's prevalent. And I had no idea of this until last year when I heard of, like, at the beginning of the year last year, somebody sent me that Tetragrammaton podcast with Cruz and Huberman and Rick Rubin. Great 6.5 hour long podcast if anybody wants to take the time. But it opened my eyes to just the possibility that most of the chronic diseases on this planet today are caused by the prevalence and increase in blue light within our screens and bulbs. We never had this much blue in our firelight. We never had this much blue in our incandescents. And that's what's driving this circadian disruption. My eyes were open to that. And even though it explained so many things wrong with the health of the world today, I was still skeptical. Luckily, I had one friend that was like, here's the formula, dude. All you got to do is essentially go outside in the morning for at least 20 minutes or so without sunglasses. And then, wear these silly looking orange blue blocking glasses at night. And I was still skeptical. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this out and I'm going to disprove it. So I set out on my own little challenge to disprove this I said, I'm going to try this for 30 days. I'm going to prove my friend wrong. Even though he said he lost weight, his anxiety levels dissipated, he sleeps so much better, all this stuff. It seems absurd. What, wearing an orange pair of glasses each night did that? Yeah, right, dude. And so I put it to the test. I tried it, completely skeptical. And then within a week, I was waking up without an alarm clock, popping up out of bed. I always used to have to like hit the snooze button a couple times, right? And then within a couple of weeks, just I noticed just an increase in energy levels and passion and zest for life. And by the end of maybe 3 weeks or so, I was, I just felt so much more human. I felt like more passion and zest for life than I've maybe had since a teenager. And it just has increased since then. So the reason this was so impactful for me, I think, is um, I was doing everything wrong from a circadian standpoint, dude. Like, I thought I was a night owl. I thought, oh, I just like to stay up till midnight or 1 a.m. each night. And I thought it was cool. I have all these monitors on my desk here. You can't see, but like there's 6 or 7 of them. And I would have them all on at full factory settings, like, tennis highlights going on this screen. This, like, I wanted to have them all. For some reason, I was blasting myself with blue spike energy and suppressing my melatonin from every single angle completely unknowingly. I didn't know that light had any effect on my physiology, on my energy levels. But once I figured it out, and once I started making these improvements, and I felt like a new human being by the end of that 30 days, I told myself I'm never going back to my old way of living again. And I've been kind of on a mission to I've just been contemplating, how can I convince people to try this? Like, if you tell somebody to wear an orange pair of glasses each night, you might as well be telling them to wear a tinfoil hat, right? It feels crazy. And I know this from experience because I only knew one other person on the planet that wore these silly glasses at night last year when I started trying this stuff. And I felt like a weirdo because of that, because we're social creatures and we only do what we feel is normal that other people around us are doing. So I've been contemplating on how can we get more people to try this out. And I had an idea come to me last year as I was kind of just winding down, falling asleep, but just hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like, we need to have some type of like grassroots movement challenge, because you can try to talk to people one-on-one about this stuff and it doesn't resonate. But people are largely social creatures. And if they look around and there's a big movement happening and there's huge changes and improvements that all these people are experiencing, they're going to get excited about it. But for that idea, I was like, there's something there. I got to do something with this. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then through the Quantum Biology Collective, I met Daniel at an event. And we got to talking. I said, dude, I got an idea that I really think there's some meat on the bones here. So we had a meeting, and I told him about the idea for the CRD challenge, and he's been on board ever since. He's like, oh my God, dude, this is something. Like, we can make this work. And we've been talking every day since, several times a day, and teamed up with some other great folks in the UK. And Daniel, maybe that's a good segue for you to go into, kind of where we've gone since we first started talking about this 7 or 8 months ago.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting and key when you talk about your story, Jeff, is that, you're not somebody who is experiencing severe symptoms. You've told me in the past, yeah, I was puffy, I had a little bit of extra weight. I was definitely a little bit more fatigued and grumpy around the edges. But, in stark contrast, my story from my youth, age 13, 14, 15, I'll give you the TLDR on it, got into a lot of video gaming, very late nights, a lot of escapism, to the point where I'm awake until 3, 4 a.m. At this time, I was the only kid I knew, literally the only child I knew in my neighborhood or like on the island where I live in Guernsey that was doing this sort of stuff. And fast forward now, and it's obviously every kid, children, teenagers are so susceptible and maybe like the most at-risk population for this stuff. But the impact on me was, I was obese beyond measure for my age. I was chronically anxious, chronically stressed. As a young adult, had no libido, terrible autoimmune related issues. And at the crux of that, like, was this profound disconnect between how I should be living and interacting with the environment, being outdoors, as Jeff alluded to, so much blue light toxicity, so much technology use, and really just losing touch with, how I should be living as a human being, really. And over the last 15 years, kind of putting my health back together, doing degrees in psychology, studying functional medicine and nutrition, and slowly like bringing all the pieces of the puzzle together and growing an appreciation for like how interconnected all of these areas of health are, but really having no stable base, and that stable base being like the circadian health, the relationship with nature, the aspects of what we refer to as quantum biology, and how interactions with our environment and nature really like lay the foundation upon which we can stack all these great habits, like eating really well and moving more, and relaxing and de-stressing and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, for the last 5 years, championing a charity, doing a lot of work with this concept, although I didn't label it, CRD, Circadian Rhythm Disruption, at the time. In schools, working with children from sort of cohorts through, age 13 to 19. And in fact, we're just about to publish a study looking at the use of nighttime blue light blocking glasses with a company that sponsored us called Viva Rays. So I'm sure you're available to comment on in the space. And all I can say is, Jeff approached me with an idea, a seedling, about 6 months ago. And this seed was, that there is an opportunity for us here to strike while the iron is hot, in the sense that, the knowledge and the appreciation of circadian science is beginning to catch on, is beginning to grow. And it's an opportunity now that actually we can use that momentum to spread the message like wildfire. And we know so many people in the space, so many people have been on your podcast, and so many other great podcasts in the quantum and circadian health space, and the amount of people that we thought would support this thing. And so over the last 6 months, with the help of Avi and Lauren, our two trusted colleagues, and Jeff's brilliant ideas, and quite frankly my determinism in the face of difficulty and challenges, sometimes we've put together something which is first of its kind. I would dare say phenomenal, in the sense that a lot of people come into this space and this idea of circadian rhythms, and I've had clients in the past say to me, is this just another thing I have to learn? It's another thing, I've just got my head around the paleo diet, or how I should be eating, and my exercise routines, and like winding down and de-stressing, and now you're telling me about all this other stuff, and it seems so overwhelming. And I can appreciate that. It took me, quite frankly, a few years to truly embed like a lot of these principles. And I did that alone, and I did it in isolation, and I did it in a way in which it didn't feel that fun, because there wasn't like the social element of accountability of someone to explain to me really what was happening, and to help me appreciate, the good times and the pitfalls and the challenges and the obstacles and the drawbacks of when you make changes around your lifestyle as it pertains to, where you spend your time in the daytime, where you work, where you play, where you socialize, where you eat, where you train. It's largely a conversation around the environment. Obviously, a large part of that is the light environment. And so what Jeff and I and Avi and Lauren have developed through our organization Quantumly, the CRD challenge itself, is like a 21-day simple, step-by-step learning process that anybody can come at any level of education, all the way from masters, PhDs, all the way down to your everyday person on the street who has no interest in academia, and they can appreciate like the grounded and kind of approachable way in which we're sharing this education. But not only that, they can also go on like an experiential journey with a ton, and I mean a ton, of other people who are also committed to ultimately improving their lives. We've been discussing ways in which we talk about the challenge with people, and we say is this something that we aim at somebody who's profoundly unwell, or someone who's already performing well and wants to perform better? And the truth of the matter is, circadian rhythms and circadian biology influences every system, organ, cell in the body. And if you're an individual, a human being who wants to live a life of purpose and passion, or who just wants to get himself out of a rut, or to address any of the challenges in their life, there's nothing that's going to be made worse by improving your circadian health, and ultimately undoing or ameliorating a lot of that circadian rhythm disruption, which is just a natural byproduct of living a normal human life in the 21st century.
Hey friend, if you're as health conscious as I am, then you will know what you put on your body matters just as much as what you put in your body. After all, your skin is the largest organ and you are absorbing things all the time. And so many of our skin products today are filled with toxic chemicals, from PFAs to formaldehyde to varying toxic and heavy metals, titanium dioxide, and beyond. That's why I'm super excited to partner with Ancient Health and Healing, that is bringing health back into skincare. Whether it's deodorant or toothpaste, what you put on your body, in your body, your oral microbiome, your skin microbiome, matters. At the end of the day, the dose makes the poison, and many of us are filling our toxin buckets up faster than we can empty them. And Ancient Health and Healing offers simple solutions with real-world ingredients, from methylene blue to beef tallow. Things that are not only great for you, but great for your skin. And they're giving you guys a 10% discount with our code DRADIO10. That's DRADIO 10 at checkout. Yeah, Daniel, I really appreciate everything you just said, because I think it really encompasses the big picture. And as somebody that does work with people as yourself has as well, one-on-one, I think really when you're approaching somebody that is dealing with, whether it's like issues that Jeff experienced or issues that Daniel, your experience was much more similar to mine is the obesity side of things. I had a lot of the same sort of mental and physical ailment issues as a teenager and late teens, early adult, with autoimmune disease, with anorexia nervosa. And I really changed my view around all of these different ailments that I see in modern society when you look at things through a circadian lens. And I talked to my mom, who is on the board of education, as well as has had 35 years of teaching in lower elementary children, first grade and kindergarten. And she tells me every day that she has never seen the amount of chronic disease, mental health disorders, anxiety disorders, childhood defiance disorders in very young children. Her entire career, she's never seen the amount that she sees now. And it's not a mystery. And what I think that everyone needs to do, and what I love about talking about this subject in particular, is if you just remove the noise of everything around you and you really look at what is life on this planet supposed to be doing, I think everything becomes very blatantly clear. And I think everyone here could attest to that. And maybe I can get your thoughts on this from both of you, that the further you get into this journey, I find the simpler life becomes, and the simpler I need to focus. I don't need to be like, constantly. I think you get this a lot from clients, where it's like they feel like they constantly need to be researching a new thing because they want to find the secret sauce. And I think the problem with the health community is that every few years there's a new FOMO. And I don't want CRD to be the new FOMO. It's the original foundational breaking point of disease. And it all starts there. And so, Jeff, maybe I can hand it off to you right here, because what I love about it is that on a high level, it is fundamentally simple. How you apply it can become complex, but that's because of your predispositions to the way you live your life, not necessarily the fundamentals themselves.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like people hear about this circadian rhythm interventions, getting outside in the morning, blocking blue light at night, taking light breaks, don't wear your sunglasses. They think of that as if it's some new thing that we're adding to the top of the pyramid of their health. And it's just maybe going to move the needle like 1 or 2%. I don't want to do all that. No. You're missing the point here, folks. This is the base level of the pyramid that affects everything. Your energy levels, your hormones, your every aspect of your physiology, your health and well-being will be improved if you try these circadian principles consistently. These challenges are nothing new. There's been at least 10 people that I've talked to in this space that I've interviewed who have done these 21-day, Sarah Kleiner calls it the leptin reset. Other people calls it it's all the same system of light and training our body to live in rhythm with nature. And, most people like me, I'm surprised that I even tried this, because I didn't have like a chronic health condition. Like most people that you hear about in this space are at their wits' end. Like, I know your story, Ryan. They were telling you had to move to Boston to get a $35,000 a month treatment to treat your autoimmune condition, because that's the only thing they know how to do. in this kind of broken centralized system. They didn't know, they didn't tell you anything about your mitochondrial health. They didn't tell you anything about your circadian rhythm. But luckily, your intuition guided you because you said, I'm not going to do that. This doesn't feel right. And you were guided to mitochondria. And I love your story. And like, Daniel, you were at your wit's end. You were depressed, suicidal. Like, most people wait until they get a check mark of a chronic health condition, which the centralized system has failed them on. They can't, the depression meds aren't working, et cetera, et cetera. They wait until they get something and it can't be solved by anybody else. And then they start looking for the answers. What we want to encourage everyone to do, this applies to every human being on the planet, even if you're like me, where you just had kind of low energy levels. If you would ask me 2 years ago, how do you feel, Jeff? I'm fine. Like, I just thought it was the new normal to wake up just groggy, not wanting to get out of bed, like couldn't fall asleep. I was tired but wired in the evening. I just thought once you get over the age of 40 or even 30, I've been feeling this way for a long time. That's just the new normal. But I wasn't correlating my lifestyle. I didn't understand that circadian rhythms had anything to do with the lack of energy. I can tell you guys firsthand that I never felt better or anything more impactful since getting my circadian rhythm in order. And like, this is not one more thing that we're telling you to add on top. Like my friend Mike that tried to get me to try bulletproof coffee 10 years ago. And he said, oh, it's so great. You got to put raw butter in your coffee. That didn't do anything. This is different. Circadian rhythm interventions will improve your life dramatically. You're not going to cure your chronic health condition in 3 weeks. We're not making any promises, but you will slowly and gradually turn up your energy levels 2 or 3% every day. It's hardly even noticeable day by day, but at some point you'll look back and you'll think, oh my gosh, what an amazing shift that just happened. So that's kind of where we're headed, just to get people to realize this is not a minute little deal. This is the base level of your health. It's been ignored for far too long. Ryan, as you said, it's affecting our children's health in so many ways. So just leave it at that.
And actually on that note, I kind of want to ask Daniel kind of a pointing question, just because it's a little bit relevant as far as time right now. And I found it really alarming. And what's interesting is you can sort of see the centralized scientific paradigm trying to normalize it so that, one, people won't question the change, but then they'll think that the shift is normalized. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So recently the CDC came out with new milestone breakdowns for childhood development. So they removed crawling, for example, as a milestone for childhood development, and they made backward shifts for a lot of the other milestones. For example, they moved the milestone of walking from 12 months to 15 months. They moved rolling from 4 months to 6 months. And then they removed some of the word development and speaking milestones as well, from like using 2 words by this age, or I think it was like 4 words in a sentence by like age 3 or something like that. And they moved it all the way back to like at 3, we're only expecting a child to say like 2 words strung together. And you can see from a centralized point of view, the way they're tackling this is we're just going to move the milestone so that 10 years from now, people will just have this normalized and no one will suspect that, this is an actual epidemic of childhood development. And what I want people to understand, because I have very young nieces, I just bought my 3-year-old niece a daylight computer because she had been running around with a tablet for probably since she was like 2 years old. And she is addicted, and like, if you take it away from her, she screams, freaks out. And I don't think people really understand the ramification of a child's light environment compared to someone with a fully developed neural cortex in their mid-20s. And we're seeing like rates of autism explode and various things. And I don't want to say one thing causes something in isolation, but we do know, environmentally speaking, we're bombarded by negative stimuli in a way that's never been seen on such a wide scale. So maybe I can pass it to you, Daniel, from like a child perspective, why this actually, in my opinion, is probably even more important from a developmental side, because they don't have as much myelin, they don't have as much, protection in their brains and their eyes to combat some of these things that maybe you or I have or Jeff has. And I sort of look at it as a generational thing of my grandparents had it better than my parents had it better than me, and then I'll have it better than Gen Z, and Gen Z will have it slightly better than Gen Alpha from all these stimuli, because it's only increased over time. That's why I relate so hard to your story, Daniel, is because I was just like you. I was on video games every night till 4 a.m., just blasting these things. And those were things that my parents couldn't experience because that technology didn't exist. And so when people see these problems, they're not really connecting the dots because of the rate of technological change of the last 40 years has just gone exponential.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Ryan. And I think about it this way. So I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and it's like the things that she experiences now, like the consoles, she's just started school the other day, and it's like we do a lot of learning on our pads now, on our devices and such like that. And I often think about it this way, like the genie's out of the bottle, right? Like it's not going back in the bottle. Okay, like we are where we are, like I was a kid, 90s kid, 93 I was born. I was one of the first kids that had, a Pokemon games console, a little handheld Game Boy, and what happened then? Yeah, that profoundly, disconnected me from the natural environment, because it meant that I sat inside playing my Game Boy. Sure, it wasn't blasting me with, high dose blue light from these super, energy efficient, but ultimately disgracefully harmful LEDs. But in a way, like we were shifting in that direction then. One of the things I say to people is, they say to me, well, it's, the food, the food and the stress levels and the post-COVID and all these things. And I say, our food has been, for want of a better word, poisoned for a long time. Monsanto's been around for a long time. We've been eating a lot of SHIT for a long time, right? But what is like the most profound change that's happened over the last decade or 2 decades, and it is the rate of technological advancement, right? And it's our connectivity, whether it's the 3Gs, 4Gs, 5Gs, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, everything needing to be talking and walking and speaking to every other device. And then like the profound changes, and I use this word so often at the minute because it's just so apt at explaining really what's going on, to the light environment, the switch towards more energy efficiency, away from these, broader full spectrum light sources like incandescence, and even to a degree, you could argue like halogen light bulbs and stuff like that were probably a little bit more complete in their spectrum. And of course, now that energy efficiency is the thing, and now that we're becoming so technologically advanced, and where 20, 30, 40 years ago you couldn't afford to keep the lights on all the time, and you couldn't afford to kit your entire house out, and we didn't live maybe in such a consumerist culture where the whole of the town was lit up with the brightest lights all night, just in case you drive past at 3 a.m. and you need to see what's in the shop window. That is a profound change, and it's really difficult because as an adult who's 31 years old, you ask me, what was I doing 10 years ago? It's very hard to reflect back, but the reality is that I wasn't glued to my screen as much as I am now 10 years ago, but it's relative to what we're experiencing now. And when it comes to children, I honestly think that we are sleepwalking into the most disastrous circumstances that we've ever created for a generation of human beings. And the reality is, I say to people on every podcast I speak on, we face a lot of problems as a species on planet Earth. And who's going to solve those problems? Of course, we're going to inseminate those ideas and we're going to plant the seeds, but ultimately it's going to be future generations which do, or are they capable? Are they capable of picking up where we left off? Are they capable of, envisaging and, visioning the future? Because ultimately, I ate a lot of bad foods as a child. Okay, I gained a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight. Brilliant. I was very fortunate in my early years. I was on that cusp, and I think you were as well, Ryan, where there wasn't a lot of technology when I was very young, and then it, began to explode around the age 10, 11, going forward. Now, as you said, children are having their physiology fundamentally distorted and their growth and development distorted from the moment they're in the womb. Let's not even talk about when the child comes out of the womb and the stress and the pressures of society on parents, and the idea that you should be parenting your child in front of an iPad and it's totally fine, and I get it. And then what happens is we put all that pressure and all that onus on the parents, and we say, it's bad parenting, you're not engaging, connecting. But these devices and this light has us all hooked. Whether it's the parents, the children, the grandparents, whatever, everybody these days is being pulled towards, some of these devices. And the thing is, if you don't get this right in the first years of development, it's like you have no idea what you're setting your children up for. And as a culture, as a society, like, honestly, if what we say here is that we want a better future, like, we have to look at the future, and the future is every child being born, every child growing, every child learning, and the people who will be replacing us when we're gone. And ultimately, like, there are a lot of things, as I kind of alluded to, that you can undo, right? Or you can improve. But like, if a child doesn't develop the systems that it needs to in the correct ways, it may never reach the point where they can improve that. And that's, I think, is clear and like, we don't have to say A, B, we don't have to try and prove causality in this conversation. But, what was profound for me was when I studied psychology in my third year university, they introduced a module that's called Critical and Philosophical Approaches to Psychology. And this is the first time I sat in, a class, and they asked me to question society, the social construct and the fabric of society. And they also called into question, increasing rates of things like autism. And the answer that we were given was better diagnosis. And that was 15 years ago, almost, And what's the answer now? Because we've gotten so good at diagnosing it, we find it in every, case potentially. It's it's something's not right, and when something doesn't feel right, you should kind of hedge bet that there is something slightly awry.
Artificial blue light from technology is destroying our health. It disrupts melatonin production, sleep quality, and our circadian rhythms, which has been linked to pretty much all chronic disease. It also rewires our dopamine reward system, which makes it addictive by design. That is why I'm so thankful to have found the Daylight computer, the first company in the world making a computer that has a blue light free screen. They use paper reflective screen technology, so it's blue light free, flicker free, eye strain free, and is easily used outdoors, so you can use technology while getting the benefits of full spectrum sunlight. For more information, you can listen to our recent podcast with the founder of Daylight Computer, Anjan, on his incredibly inspiring story on why he wants to bring technology to the masses that is not detrimental to our health. You can go to buy.daylightcomputer.com/dradio to pre-order the Daylight tablet today and begin using your technology in a fashion that's way more in line with our biology and nature.
Yeah, it's huge. And actually, I was going to sort of pass this similar question off to Jeff because I know you have young children as well. And one of the things that I think can make it difficult, and I sort of posed this question to one of my friends that is in the space that also has young kids, and sort of leaves me with a bit of fear of having children in the modern setting, is sort of because everyone else is doing the normal thing. And maybe you're more knowledgeable as a parent because you've gone on this journey yourself, and you don't want this for your children. So you're going to restrict them potentially on technology usage and things like that. I've seen this with a very close friend of mine's kids that they've gone out into the world and experienced these things from other families that don't have this fundamental knowledge. And they come home and they're like, Mom and Dad, you're so unfair for taking this, sweet thing away from me. Like, why do I have a flip phone when all my friends have an iPhone and they're 8 years old? And I just, it's sort of a hypothetical because it's like parenting is an evolving like knowledge, like you're learning all the time as a parent, I would assume. And I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. But I'd love to know how you think about these things, Jeff, with your own kids and as they go out into the world and change and evolve, because we've seen in the past children that have these extreme restrictions. And I've seen this in friends of mine. I was a pretty loose kid. My parents kind of let us do a little bit of everything. And I feel like we turned out pretty well rounded just because we didn't go into the extremes. But I've had other friends who were totally like time restricted on tech, all this stuff. And then the minute they get out, when they're 18, go to college, they go nutso the other way. I have friends that became drug addicts, like all sorts of crazy stuff from just the way that they were held back. Maybe, I don't know. But I'd love to know just sort of like, how do you approach that with young kids? And as they get older, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So I've never been more thankful for figuring something out, not just for myself and the way that I've kind of shifted in my energy levels and passion for life and all these things since getting my circadian rhythm in order. But my 3-year-old is going to be 4 in December. I'm just so thankful that he sleeps so well. He's just a happy, perfect little guy. And, we live a not super strict circadian life. It's not that hard to do these things. He's not walking around with blue blockers each night because we don't have any blue in our environment. We have like low, dim, amber bulbs after sunset. We don't do much screen time. Like all these things are simple and they're effective. And, Dr. Kelsey Dexter was telling me she had dramatic improvements with her children when she used to have to wrestle them to bed for like an hour just to get them to wind down. And now through simple like light interventions, dim incandescent lighting and, reducing screen time at night, things like that, they just fall asleep with ease. It's just been the most magical shift. And so many other people I could mention. I've spoken to like 50 plus people I've interviewed in this space because I'm just so passionate about collecting stories. Because people will hear my story, and I don't know, I didn't mention I lost like 30 pounds over the course of several months. That was kind of a big shift for me too. Well, guess what? It's not an anecdotal story. There's at least 10 other people that I've interviewed that also just magically started losing weight, even though they were exercising and dieting less, just from less blue light at night. So kind of going on a divergent path there. But to answer your question about the children, the huge rises in autism, the huge rises in our children having obesity, that was never a thing. Go start looking at the science, people. Time is up to like keep ignoring this. Blue enriched light in the evening increases, almost like photosynthesis, it increases our glucose and insulin levels. It's not just one study on this. There's tons of them. And light affects our physiology. It affects our metabolism. All of our markers in our body are affected by the light that entrains our body to create those things. So just what do you call it when you ingest something and it elicits a biochemical reaction in your body? We call that a drug. Okay. Well, blue light, the higher the blue content, the higher the elicitation of reduction in melatonin, the higher it increases your glucose and insulin. Light is a drug, and a lot of times all you have to do is modify that drug, turn down the color temperature to make it more red, and you've reduced the amount of biological impact on your body. But making your screen red seems weird. I like seeing it in full factory settings. We're going to change what's normal on this planet. It's going to be, just last thing I'll say on children, I truly believe that all this circadian stuff is going to be common knowledge in 20 years, hopefully before then. And by that time, if you willingly and knowingly let your child shine a blue enriched light into their eye consistently in the evening, you'll be reported to Child Protective Services. It's once you truly realize the impact that you're having on this, like it's not a joke. You get your children's health and happiness, then hormonal development and all these other aspects of their physiology are being affected by the more blue light you give them, especially in the evening. This isn't a paranoid aspect. You don't have to avoid screens all the time. Blue light in the day, good. Blue light in the night, after sunset, bad. Essentially, there's a lot more nuance to it than that, but I've never been more passionate about sharing all this stuff because you look at the statistics on all the childhood diseases. They're making like an Ozempic type drug for kids now that have obesity that are 6 years old. Is that where we're headed? Something's got to change here. I've never been more fired up to just raise awareness of just how big a deal this is.
Yeah, I always tell people that ignorance is bliss, but truth can be transformative. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting because I was at a conference this last week, which is the biggest online video business conference. It's co-owned by Mr. Beast, a guy named Daryl Eves. That's probably one of the biggest like YouTube guru type people, works with huge, extremely gigantic channels, including Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast was not there, for various reasons. But but what was interesting is that I was just in this building for 3 days, just surrounded by like this artificial stimulus for like 3 straight days straight up with like barely any time outside. And you can feel like the drainage, and it's not just from networking and socializing that like can drain you. It was just like the light was freaking insane. And I was walking around with my daylight computer showing some of these bigger creators like, hey, you should check this thing out for like scripting and writing stuff and doing preliminary research. Because one of the biggest issues I see in the creator economy is people just getting burned out from constantly being behind these lights all freaking day long. I know people that live in their their computer room like a bear in a cave all winter long, but it's year round, and their health just deteriorates so fast. And it's so much faster than it ever used to be. One thing I wanted to talk about, maybe Daniel can give us a little more nuance on this subject, because I find it interesting. I have a friend that's a terminal cancer survivor. Not once did we ever talk about light, although I think if he had addressed light early on, it probably would have helped him out insurmountably more and faster than just sort of focusing like on sort of the stereotypical food things that we talk about. But the stats are freaking insane. So like 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will now get cancer, which is nuts. And I think rates of younger people getting cancer, meaning below 50, like 20 to 50, is like up 79% in like the last 20 years, which is an insane statistic. And like you were mentioning, Jeff, earlier, with conditions, sort of the go-to centralized line is, well, we're just better diagnosticians for these diseases. But I think real people, and I don't think you need to have an IQ of 130 to one, like you don't need a crazy IQ to see these patterns. Real people know that something is up. And so maybe we can dive into cancer just a little bit and talk about some of the foundational principles light has with cancer. Like there was a really cool study that was a global study. I'll try to put it in the show notes below, that basically showed that light, and I think it's been shown with breast cancer a lot, that light has a dramatic impact on breast cancer outcomes, as well as the development of breast cancers. But you're actually seeing this in pretty much all of the major high-hitting cancers. And we had Alexis Cowan on the show about 2 months ago, and we were talking about skin cancer, because that's sort of the one thing people are always like, oh, scared of skin cancer stuff. I will refer people to that episode to go watch that. We're not going to really get into too much of that today. But what she was saying is that sun may give you, an increased risk of cancers with like a 3% or lower mortality rate, extremely low. But they're protecting you, sunlight will protect you from cancers with a 20 to 60% mortality rate. And so if you weigh the odds, it's like abundantly clear sort of like what the decision you need to make in your life. But Daniel, maybe you can kind of talk about that, because I think cancer, it will be next to neurodegenerative disease. It will be like those will be like the 1 and number 2 killers of anyone in modern society, if it's not already. And heart disease will still be out there, but those two are going to definitely overtake, if not already. I think neurodegenerative technically overtook heart disease on a global scale. But I'd love to just get your take on that and light's importance in those scenarios as well.
Right. Can I just say one thing? And Daniel, I'll cue it up for you.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as cancer, let's focus on all the other cancers except skin. We're kind of like we're focused on the blue light aspects of this necessarily. And it's one thing I'll mention before passing the baton off to Daniel is don't take any things that Ryan or Daniel is saying or me, to heart. Don't believe it. Just go and look it up. The studies aren't just correlational. The people that have the most highest blue enriched light in the evening are associated with having more cancer. It's not one of those things, because association data doesn't always tie things back. It's like it's like saying 50% of people that ate apples within the past 3 weeks had a car crash or something. Like there's not always a correlational tie-in. But the point that I'm making on cancer is we know that it's not just correlational. We know how it's happening. Blue enriched light suppresses our melatonin, and melatonin is actually not just a sleepy hormone like we've always been taught, but it's an antioxidant. It aids in the processes of apoptosis and autophagy, and just is our restorative hormone that kills cancer cells before they develop. And so we're suppressing that by having more blue light at night, and it's a real thing. And I just wanted to focus on that part, that we're not going to focus on the skin cancer. We're not encouraging people to go out and, get midday sun and get burned or anything like that. That won't be an option in the Northern Hemisphere when we're starting out with this thing anyway, with no UVB. But Daniel, I'll just pass it off to you. I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So, like, in writing the content for the CRD challenge, I spent, tens of hours researching and looking at like the latest review papers from the last 5 or 6 years, right? And what we see is obviously, rates of cancer rising exponentially, as well as, essentially, I often think like, what's going to compete? Is it going to be cancers, or is it going to be like the heart attacks, or is it going to be like neurodegenerative conditions? And the fact is, like, just the rate of death from like chronic non-communicable diseases getting so high that like the number of people who are dying from just natural causes is squishing down to the point at which like they all get a piece of the pie, right? Like, and the piece of the pie is getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the natural way in which human beings would usually pass is just decreasing. And what I found in that like literature is it's just links to like every form of cancer, essentially, because what you're looking at is as Jeff alluded to, like such profound disruption to our melatonin, which is such a powerful immunoregulatory hormone, such a powerful anti-cancer, anti-tumor hormone. So they've done like obviously, umpteen studies now in mice and rats looking at what happens, when you restrict melatonin or when you give melatonin, and like how does that affect tumor growth and such like that. So, without saying that blue light is causing cancer, obviously there are many issues out there relating to this, and there are many experts who know far more about this, and I've listened to some pretty phenomenal podcasts that I'm not even going to try and butcher or paraphrase some of the most important takeaways from those. But it's like, whatever way we look at this, there's nothing good that comes from circadian rhythm disruption. And then I kind of like to flip this over and put it back to you guys in this way, which is, when we were in functional medicine coaching academy years ago, I always remember this phrase, and we used to say, you can coach people, you can lead people with something we call an NEA or a PEA. So the NEA is the negative emotional attractor, and the PEA is the positive emotional attractor. Okay, so one of the problems I have with like public health messaging at large is that it's very doom and gloom. And of course, we have to talk about these things. We have to talk about increasing rates of all of these diseases and the negative impacts and all of this sort of stuff. But you can motivate people through two methods, right? You can scare them or you can inspire them. And so I would ask us, let's step away from this for a second. Let's flip the conversation on its head and let's talk about, what do people stand to gain by addressing this stuff? Because ultimately, whether you're somebody who is got a terminal diagnosis of cancer, or a chronic long-term health condition, multiple, or you're somebody who doesn't, why would you want to address these steps and improve your circadian health? I mean, like, Jeff, you spoke to it a little bit in terms of like your experiences. Ryan, I'll pass it back to you, and then I'd like to share afterwards a little bit about what I actually saw in some of the schools research that I was undertaking with teenagers, and why I think personally, and this is why the positive emotional attractor is so important, is because kids are so inspired. And when you inspire a child, it unlocks their creativity and unlocks their mind. And a lot of what I saw in going and educating children as opposed to adults, which I've worked with as well, is that they immediately take up that positive emotional attractor, right? And they do something with it. They create something with like this innovation that they're understanding and learning. Whereas, with adults, we can quite often be there like, I've got to do this thing because otherwise it's going to mean this. And then we get wrapped up in this narrative of like, I'm all just trying to avoid bad things happening, as opposed to like feeling pulled towards like an inspired vision.
Right. Daniel, I will just jump in briefly here to add a little bit to that. So yeah, we're not going for the scare factor. We're not going to, you got to reduce your risk of cancer to do these things. It's more just, we want to share stories of inspiration. That's why I've been on this mission to record with, I think I'm at 50 plus. I can't keep track. I don't know how many countless hours of footage that I've scrubbed through from people and just trying to get their condensed stories. Because long story short, we're just going to try to inspire people to do this, because you don't see enough testimonials from people who have tried these light and circadian interventions. So it won't just be my story. It'll be 50 plus other people. And I will just go ahead and say this. If anybody listening to this podcast has an amazing story of how improving your circadian rhythm improved your life. You know, were you able to get off medications or avoid, harmful medical interventions, or if you have an amazing story to share, go ahead and email the crdchallenge@gmail.com, and I'd love to set up a time to briefly record with you, and your story will be stitched together with hundreds of other people. So when our Instagram account launches here in about 10 days, then we're going to start loading it up with tons of people's stories, very briefly. Sometimes they'll be packed in, showing all the people that lost weight and their before and after pictures. I got a good one of that. So once people see visually, oh my gosh, all these people are experiencing this. It's not just Jeff's anecdotal story. It's not just Daniel's anecdotal subjective experience of feeling better. No, it's thousands of people. Anybody who tries the circadian stuff will feel benefit, some more dramatically than others. One thing I'll point out to people, did you know that blue eyes are more susceptible to blue light because they have less melanin in them? Light colored eyes have less melanin, so they absorb less photons. More of that blue light gets into you. I now know that is why I'm more affected by blue light, because I have lighter eyes. So if anybody out there, I don't know, maybe you know somebody that's light-eyed and they have a thyroid condition like I do, try to get them to try this challenge. It's just for 3 weeks. And the idea is that at the end of 3 weeks, just like it happened for me, maybe, hopefully, you'll never want to go back to your circadian disrupted ways of life again, and your life may be improved forever.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by our lead sponsor, EMR Tech. EMR Tech manufactures high-quality, high-powered red light therapy devices. In my opinion, red and infrared light are two of the biggest nutrient deficiencies in our modern society due to our indoor lifestyles. Red light therapy devices, like the ones from EMR Tech, can help combat that by providing high-powered red light while being indoors. I personally use mine every morning and every evening. Red and near infrared light is extremely beneficial for energy production in our body because it boosts mitochondrial function and penetrates deep into the cell. It is also extremely beneficial for skin health, eye health, as well as our circadian rhythms. And this is actually pretty much why I bought everyone in my family an EMR Tech red light therapy device for Christmas. EMR Tech panels are low flicker, low EMF, and use targeted wavelengths such as 830 and 630 nanometers, amongst others, to get extremely effective results. For more information, go to emrtech.com and use our code DRadio10 for 10% off your order. That's emrtek.com with our code DRadio, DRADIO 10 to save at checkout. I was just going to say, I'm going to meet Elijah Wood in a couple weeks, and I'm going to straight up walk up to him and be like, hey, you got blue eyes. You need to start wearing blue blockers. You have less melanin.
Give him one of those cheap pairs.
I will. I actually will. No, it's just at a Comic-Con thing here in Salt Lake. But I was like, no, I'm going to go meet Elijah Wood. And just because. And but I'll straight up do that. I don't care.
Yeah, have him be an ambassador for the CRD challenge.
That'd be so wild.
Yeah.
But no. Actually, it's so funny, Daniel, that you brought up that segue, because I was like, Daniel just stole my segue, because I wanted to get to that in the last 15 minutes of the show here, because one of the things that I've been on the online space. I won't say successfully, but I've been in the online space for a long time as a content creator. Like I said, no one would probably know who I was because I wasn't that good. But good enough. But the one thing that I really got annoyed with is that everyone plays on negativity, because negativity sells. And we know that it's worked for centuries from a media perspective. But the problem is it only takes you so far. And I think now more than ever, we live in a time of negativity and fear mongering as a way of control. Not to say that they aren't truths, but But my point is like you said, with driving creativity, we really need to get people to know that it's like, it sort of creates a woe is me scenario of, I can't do anything, then I might as well not even try. When this challenge is all about, look at all the opportunity you have, and you just have to grab it. And the cool thing is it's so tangible for literally anyone that's what makes this thing, I think, so important. So I'll kind of hand it off to you, Daniel, to talk for the last 10-15 minutes here about who we're trying to reach, why, I mean, we kind of talked about why it's so important, but also just like the opportunity that just sits and wait for these people. And it's like anyone can be doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like appreciate what you said. You made me think a lot about how, and I never considered it in this way before, but ultimately, like when we cause people to feel fear, we cause them to feel insular, we cause them to feel isolated, and we disconnect people from themselves, we disconnect them from each other. And inspiration is the complete opposite, right? We make people, more socially fluid, more collaborative, more creative, more inspired. And I really saw that the most when I started going into schools and providing sleep education and blue light blocking glasses and the various different things that we did in the research projects. Because prior to that, the only way I had access to a child was through a family, right? I used to work with adults, do a lot of coaching and stuff like that. And so you go in, I'd explain, some of the circadian health changes alongside nutrition stuff that I'd be doing with the family. And it would be like, the parents would be like, oh, we've got to wear these glasses. And they'd be like to their kids, you've got to wear these glasses. And then like a week later, I'd go back in and like, I'd be like, so how's it going? We'd be discussing, kind of recapping everything that's going on. And the kids would be there like, yeah, these glasses are great. They work so well. And the parents would be there like, oh, yeah, I haven't really been wearing them, or, I kind of found an excuse not to. And the kids would look at the parents and be there like, Mum, Dad, like, why would you not do this? Like, I feel good. Like, do you not want to feel good? And like, that's one thing that I really like about young minds, is that I feel that in a way, like, they are like, as Freud would have said in many ways, like tabula rasa. They are like blank slates in terms of yes, human beings, we are born with this like negativity bias in terms of our survival, and everything's very easy to grab our attention when it's negative. But children, I find, they have negativity programmed into them, and it's programmed into them at a lot of a faster rate if they're not sleeping well and they're anxious and depressed, and all of the things and the side effects that come as a result of this circadian disrupted lifestyle. So one of the things that I'm so passionate about, and essentially and this is a good segue into talking about the CRD challenge, because the CRD challenge is being operated by Quantumly, which is our business organization. And the role of Quantumly is to basically provide like decentralized quantum and circadian education to transform a global community in terms of helping us to live in rhythm and be more vibrant in terms of our health and well-being. But the CRD challenge itself is in aid of not only transforming the lives of people that take part, but raising awareness, standards of education, and also raising funds for our charity. So the charity is the Quantumly Foundation, and the foundation is exclusively working with children, teenagers, and caregivers, because ultimately I believe it's like a Buckminster Fuller quote, and I'm not going to butcher it, but if you want to change a paradigm, you build a new one. And ultimately, I believe our greatest opportunity here to like transform the world's appreciation of circadian health is by more legitimately embedding like a new curricula of understanding as early as we can into the lives of children, so that trickles up into their families as a natural byproduct of the fact that everybody gets to learn it, and it's not a net pressure for an adult or a parent to then disseminate down into their children, but in fact it's like a collective societal understanding and appreciation of this stuff. CRD challenge, what can I tell you about it? Bite-sized, step-by-step 21-day learning journey that I believe anybody, probably from teenage years upwards, can engage with and use to transform their understanding of this stuff. We've been working with, quite frankly, world-leading experts in the fields of circadian and quantum biology to create phenomenal, bite-sized, easy-to-digest content that's delivered in our free school community. So lots of opportunities to connect with other people and to gain this sense of like community connectedness, social accountability, and really be like have your hand held in many ways, like on this journey through like discovering your relationship with your environment, how like the structure of your life is influencing these things, so that everybody can learn from and be inspired by each other at whatever stage of the journey you're on, or wherever you are on that continuum from health and vibrancy to disease and dysfunction, so that all of us together can move the needle forward on our health as a collective humanity. So we're launching the challenge. Its official start date is on the 20th of October. The public launch of a kind of like registration or a recruitment drive as such will be from the 22nd of September. So I'm not entirely sure when this episode is going to air, but the chances are that you can come and sign up for the challenge already. You come and see us on crdchallenge.com. We have a video which probably encapsulates everything that we've discussed in this podcast in 3.5 minutes. So that's your first port of call. Come and check out the website. Come and check out the video. If it moves you as much as it moves all of us every single time we watch it, and me and Jeff sit on, Zoom calls the other side of the world from each other, crying every time we watch this video because it's just so moving and so heart wrenching. Then come and sign up. Come and be a part of it. It's completely free. And so we want the CRD challenge to be like dropping a stone in the ocean and watching that ripple effect turn into a tidal wave in order for us as a grassroots community to affect change for the future of humanity.
Yeah. The one thing I'll add to that is, like, for me, this community, this movement that we're building is the movement that I wish I would have had last March in 2023, March, when I first started trying this stuff, because all I heard about was this new idea from a podcast. And then I was told, go read these blogs, go listen to this podcast, I had to disseminate all this information myself, and I felt like a crazy person because I didn't have a community. I was the only person that I knew, besides one guy that was wearing these silly orange blue blockers at night. So for anyone that's interested in trying this, we got you. We're your community. We'll show you step by step. We'll guide you through it. You don't have to learn about cytochrome C oxidase or melatonin or anything. Just we'll give you the formula. It's simple. And for those that want to know, you can learn the science behind it at a high level, or you can go a little bit deeper, or we'll give you access to resources that if you really want to go deeper, you can actually get certified in these things like applied quantum biology or the new Quantum Health Academy. Like, there's some great programs out there. Everybody should know that this is the most important thing to learn about. Like I said, and I'll say it again, it's not a new thing to sprinkle on top that's barely going to move the needle. It's the biggest needle mover available for human beings and their health and physiology. And the only way that you can possibly know how much light improves your health, as Dr. Jacob Lieberman said when I interviewed him, you can't possibly know the effect that light has on your body except through experience. You can hear 10,000 studies and you might still question it. You can't possibly know how much an improved circadian rhythm can improve your life until you implement these practices consistently. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over the span of a few weeks of consistency, but you will feel more human again. I don't know how else to explain it. I haven't felt this much zest for life and happiness since I was a teenager. And I'm not trying to sell you anything except just the idea of potentially better health. And it's a completely free program, as Daniel said. I'm so excited. It's like, we're not going for dollars earned. Our one metric on this is how many lives on this planet can we improve. It's like the world's coolest video game that we're playing, and our score is like actually affecting other people's health and happiness. Like, what a better thing. It's a good time to be alive. This is an exciting project. Yeah.
It's so funny. I didn't get into some of the stuff with AI and non-native electromagnetic frequencies that I wanted to bring up with a Tom Bilyeu talk that I heard at Vid Summit last week. Maybe we'll do that next week, Jeff, in our thing.
Yeah.
But it'll be kind of interesting. But I appreciate you guys doing this, and I appreciate you guys coming on and being so open with your own stories, and also just the challenge in and of itself. I think it's brilliant. And so I just want to ask just one last thing here. Where do you want to point people here in this episode so that they can keep in touch with how the progress of the challenge is going? Because I'm sure this will come up before it is out, and just anywhere that they can opt in later on, I can put that down in the show notes.
Yeah, so I'll quickly jump in on this one. So the website is the CRDchallenge.com. It's the CRD the CRD Challenge on Twitter, on Instagram, and just the CRD Challenge page on Facebook. So we're just kind of beginning with the most major platforms. We'll inevitably transgress into other areas, but come and find us primarily on the website if you want to be moved by the content that we have available.
Awesome.
One last thing I'll say, Ryan, is for anybody out there, don't do this alone like I did it. Try to convince your wife or your cousin or your neighbor across the street who you talk to. Try to get other people to try this, and so you can talk about the benefits alone and not think that it's just a bunch of random faces online in this school community that we built. Like, encourage other people. Don't do it alone. Even in support of this community that we have. make other people around you kind of go on this journey with you. And you're going to feel it. You're going to know the difference if you try these things consistently.
My boys spitting facts. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope everyone enjoyed it. All that stuff will be down in the show notes. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time in another episode of Decentralized Radio.